Hi, I'm Chuck Lowry, Director of Sales and Marketing at Incisive Legal Intelligence, and we're carrying on our dialogue with Maddock of Altman Weil. And I thought for the second of our little segments here, we would talk for a little bit about law firm mergers. Law firm mergers have happened literally for 100 years, and there is no indication that they're going to stop now. And consultants are involved in very many aspects of most law firm mergers. And I thought that we would turn to Biff for his expertise about law firm mergers, about what the prospects are for them, maybe some of the differences between mergers in good times and mergers in bad times. A phenomenon we've seen now where a merger actually doesn't take place, but one firm ends up with lots and lots of attorneys from another firm, and maybe some idea of what in good times and bad times makes a merger work or makes a merger not work.
It's one of the places to start, Chuck, is thinking about why firms merge at all. And one of the reasons for that is many times they think about, well, we're really strong in litigation, but we have a lot of weaknesses in commercial. They're kind of the opposite. If we put both pieces together, it'll be a perfect fit. That almost never works. What we really see is firms, it's much better to have strengths and strengths joining together than strengths trying to paper over weaknesses. And we've seen that in the past. We've seen a lot of firms not really merge very successfully or even de-merge from time to time. There are also a lot of ownership issues that surprisingly enough have ownership and ego issues really, that surprisingly enough have stopped mergers dead in their tracks. Where's my name going to be in the firm name? That type of thing. So it's surprising the amount of ego that gets in the way from time to time that kind of drives mergers away. What's a good merger? A good merger really starts with a close examination of the firms, not just their economics, their practices, their locations. But I think the biggest driver of this is going to be the firm's culture. Often very difficult to measure, often very difficult to weigh, but the firm's culture, I think, is really the biggest starting point. Try to merge two firms that have very difficult or very different compensation systems, very different kind of views of what a lawyer should be, very different partnership arrangements. It's generally just not going to work. At Altman Weil, we have a very large merger business. We've been very actively engaged in that. And those are some of the things that we look for. That's why, essentially, also why you need a third party to bring a lot more candor and objectivity to it. One thing I'd recommend, it's one of the most popular additions to our website. We have a merger line spot on our website that on a day-to-day basis, we get people updated on who's merging with who.
I'm a big fan.
Well, it's actually, as I say, one of the most popular places on our website. So I'd recommend that you come take a look at it. Mergers, time it takes for a merger to consummate, generally pretty close to a year in many cases, some cases much faster track, depending on the size of the two firms merging. But again, the culture is the big driver in this case. It's something that in many cases firms overlook.
That really is I suppose, counter to the popular notion that the practice of law increasingly is driven by economic rather than cultural considerations. But you think that it's still the case that firm culture can trump economic common sense?
Well, I think the economics are in many cases easier to measure, easier to make comparisons. In many cases, firm mergers start with, let's take a look at two firms that have similar profits per partner, similar revenue picture, and then they'll fit perfectly together. The geographies may be different, their client base may be different, but as long as their economics works, that's all we need. We have to dig a lot deeper than that into some other factors. So I say, culture is one of the ones that often gets overlooked.
Finally, one last question in this segment, Biff. Obviously, economic times are different now than they were a year ago, 2 years ago. Is that going to impact the law firm merger market?
I think they're going to be looking for very different things. They're going to be looking for some short-term hygiene things For example, how do we immediately improve profitability by improving productivity? Has the firm taken some of the hard steps it may need to take with shedding some associates, even shedding some equity partners? Has it taken a long, hard look at its expenses as well as revenue? And I think those are things that firms are going to be looking much harder at than they did in previous days.
All right, thanks, Biff Maddock. We
You're welcome.
are going to conclude this segment on law firm mergers, and we'll be back here in a minute.